Hey everyone, this is Derek and welcome to the first piano lesson on the brokenkey.net. This lesson is all about finding an instrument that'll work for you without spending a ton of money. You might already have something that you're planning to play on, but this is still an important video to watch to make sure that you do actually have everything that you're going to need. So you essentially have two choices here. You can go with an acoustic piano or an electronic keyboard. If you already have an acoustic piano to play on that's in decent condition, then there's a good chance you can skip this video, but if it hasn't been tuned in a long time, then you may want to get it tuned, but that's not really essential for at least the first few lessons. Tunings aren't cheap, and sometimes if it's really out of tune, it might need to get tuned twice, and then the dollars really start to add up. It is something that should definitely be done at some point, though. Besides the issue of tuning, if the piano you have is in really poor condition, then you may want to consider buying an inexpensive keyboard anyway, which the rest of this video will help you with. I'm not going to recommend that you buy an acoustic piano unless you already have one, because they're just too expensive to start with and maintain. With that, let's talk about keyboards. It can be a little daunting trying to buy a keyboard if you're not familiar with them, because no two keyboards are going to be the same in terms of what features they have. You can often find used keyboards that have the features we're going to be looking for fairly cheap on sites like Craigslist, likely around $150 to $250. Just like with exercise equipment, it's really common for someone to buy a keyboard and then never use it, so you can likely find a great deal on a like-new keyboard if you're looking for it. Even if you do buy a keyboard new, you should be able to find a decent one for around $250 to $350. If you can't find a good used one, try checking out some big box stores for package deals, because you can often find keyboards that include stands, headphones, or other accessories for a decent price. Now keep in mind that these price ranges I'm giving you are based on a decent but admittedly low-end starting keyboard. Keyboards can cost thousands of dollars at the high end, and to be honest, you do get what you pay for, but at the price range I'm talking about, you should end up with a decent keyboard that'll do you just fine. If you get really serious about playing, then later on you can look at spending the money on something a little more high-end, maybe even looking at buying an acoustic piano. So what are you going to look for in a keyboard? There are a lot of features they can have, but here are the essentials to look for. Number of keys, sustained pedal connection port, built-in speakers, touch sensitivity, and polyphony. So let's start with number of keys. A standard piano will have 88 keys, but keyboards typically don't. Full-size keyboards are awesome, but unless you're willing to spend at least $400, it's better to go with something that's just a little bit smaller. Keyboards could have 88, 76, 61, or 49 keys depending on the size. And what they're going to do is they're going to remove the high-end and the low-end keys to get to whatever size they're going for. You're going to want a keyboard with at least 76 keys. Feel free to start with something smaller if you already have it on hand, but please don't go out and buy anything smaller than that, because you're going to quickly outgrow it. Luckily, 76 key keyboards are pretty common and you can find them for a decent price. Number 2, sustained pedal connection port. If you ever looked at an acoustic piano, you might have noticed that they have these 3 foot pedals on the floor. Keyboards typically don't come with electronic pedals and they need to be bought separately. You're not going to need all 3 pedals for your keyboard for these lessons, but there is one important one that you will need, and that's the sustain pedal on the right. Make sure your keyboard has the option to add on a sustain pedal. If you look at the back of the keyboard, there should be a connection port that says sustain. Number 3, built-in speakers. Surprisingly, some keyboards have no built-in speakers and will require you to connect to external speakers or to use headphones. Fortunately, almost all low-end keyboards will have built-in speakers, but it's still good to double-check. If your keyboard doesn't have built-in speakers, you can get by with just plugging in headphones, but wearing headphones for long periods of time can cause headaches, and I generally wouldn't recommend it, but it is an option. Number 4, touch sensitivity. On an acoustic piano, the harder you press a key, the louder the sound will be. On some keyboards, this isn't the case. No matter how hard you press the keys, they'll give you the same sound volume no matter what. If a keyboard has touch sensitivity, then the keys will be louder or softer depending on how hard you press them, and that's really important. Number 5, polyphony. Polyphony will tell you how many notes can be played at any given time on the keyboard. So if a keyboard has 6-note polyphony, then it can only play sound for 6 notes at any given time. So if you're holding down 6 notes and you press the 7th or 8th note, there will be no sound for those. You want to have at least 10-note polyphony so that you could potentially play 10 notes, one for each finger, without losing any sound. So these are what I'm calling the essential features in a keyboard that you should look for. Fortunately, if you buy any 76 key keyboard, it's most likely going to have all these other features, but it doesn't hurt to check. If you're buying one used, try looking up the model number online to find the specifications and make sure that it does have all these features. If you really want to go all out, here are some premium but non-essential features you could look for in the more expensive keyboards. 88 keys. As soon as you start looking at full-size keyboards with 88 keys, the price is going to go up really quick. Low-end 88 keyboards will start around $400 and they'll only go up from there. Weighted keys. A standard piano will have keys made of wood, but low-end keyboards make their keys out of cheap plastic, and this can sometimes give them a fake or flimsy feel. So weighted keys will better recreate the feeling of an acoustic piano. Graded hammer action. On an acoustic piano, the lower keys require a little more finger pressure than the higher keys. On low-end keyboards, all the keys are going to require the same amount of pressure. Graded hammer action will recreate this difference in pressure needed across the keyboard to make it feel more like an acoustic piano. Sound banks. Most keyboards come with a bunch of different sounds they can play apart from the standard piano sounds. Sometimes there are hundreds of sounds in these sound banks. You really don't need these, but they can be fun to play with and potentially useful depending on what you're going to be using your keyboard for. These lessons won't be using any of these extra sounds though. Auxiliary outports. Most keyboards will have this option, which you can use to either connect your keyboard to some bigger or better speakers or connect it to a computer to record yourself playing. This isn't an essential feature, but it's one you might find some use for. So now you know what to look for in a keyboard, but we're not done yet. There's a few more things that you're going to need. You're going to need something to sit on. You might get by with an office chair, hopefully one that's adjustable, but you might want to look into buying an adjustable piano bench. You should be able to find a pretty cheap one for around $35 to $50 that'll do just fine. I think it's worth the investment, and that way you don't have to wheel your office chair to your keyboard whenever you want to play. The next thing you might need is a stand for your keyboard. Hopefully you can find a keyboard that comes with the stand, but if not, then you're going to need to buy one. Just look for a simple X-frame stand like this. Luckily they're pretty cheap. If you have a choice, get one with a locking mechanism that looks like this. Try not to get one that has a bar locking mechanism like this. I'll explain why in the next lesson when I talk about body position and how you should be sitting at the piano. If you already have a stand like the one on the right, that's okay. We can make it work. It'll just take a little extra hardware and effort. The last thing you're going to need is a sustain pedal. We won't be using this for a little while, but you might as well pick it up now to be ready. I recommend the M Audio SP2 pedal, which is shown here. You should be able to buy one for around 20 bucks. You don't have to get this specific model, but make sure you do get one that actually looks like a real piano pedal. Don't buy one of these cheap looking square pedals. Hopefully this gives you a good idea of what you're going to need for these lessons. Good luck finding an instrument that works for you. Feel free to email me at derek@thebrokenkey.net with any questions you might have. Hope to see you in the next lesson.